The year is 1461, and if you're standing in the courtyard of Walachia's capital, you're not smelling flowers. You're re-smelling what happens when 20,000 Ottoman soldiers have been impaled on wooden stakes for 3 days in the summer heat. The forest of bodies stretches for miles, arranged in concentric circles like some demented work of art, and Vlad Dracula is walking among them with his lunch. Not metaphorically. He's actually eating. Roasted meat, bread soaked in wine, while his boyars try not to vomit into their sleeves. One of them makes the mistake of complaining about the smell. Vlad doesn't get angry. He just signals to the guards, and within minutes, that boyar is hoisted onto the tallest stake in the forest, elevated above the stench he found so offensive. Vlad returns to his meal. See, this wasn't random cruelty. This was policy. Psychological warfare, refined to an art form that would make Rome's emperors take notes. But here is what should crawl under your skin and stay there. This was not even considered his worst punishment. The impalement was for enemies. What Vlad did to people he knew personally, people who betrayed him, people he once called friends, that's where the real creativity lived. Understand something about medieval punishment. It wasn't about justice. It wasn't about rehabilitation. It was theater, and the stage was always public, always messy, always designed to imprint itself onto your nightmares so thoroughly that you'd tell your grandchildren about it. The condemned weren't just killed. They were transformed into cautionary tales, their bodies rewritten as political messages, their suffering stretched out like taffy because a quick death taught no lessons. Vlad understood this better than anyone. When Transylvanian merchants tried to cheat him on trade agreements, he didn't fine them. He didn't imprison them. He invited them to a feast, waited until they were drunk and comfortable, then had the doors nailed shut and burned the building down with everyone inside. The structure burned for hours. The screaming stopped long before the fire did. But that's not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is that Vlad then sent a messenger to Transylvania with the ashes and a note that essentially said, "Your merchants couldn't handle their drink. So sorry for your loss. Let me take you deeper into the machinery of medieval humiliation." Because impalement was actually the merciful option compared to what came next. There was a punishment called the boats used by the Persians, but adopted and modified by various European courts. You'd be stripped naked and trapped between two rowing boats, lashed together, so only your head, hands, and feet protruded. Then they'd force-feed you milk and honey until you developed explosive diarrhea. The waste would accumulate in the boat with you. Then they'd pour more honey over your exposed body parts. The insects would come. First flies, then wasps, and things without names. They'd lay eggs in your orifices. You'd be left floating on whatever brackish water was convenient, force-fed regularly to keep you alive for days, sometimes weeks, until infection or insect larvae or sheer biological breakdown finally killed you. One Persian king supposedly kept a political rival in the boats for 17 days. 17 days of being eaten alive from the inside and outside, simultaneously, while being chemically force-fed to prevent the mercy of starvation. The executioners changed shifts. The insects didn't. But let's return to Vlad, because his innovation wasn't just the impalement. It was the preparation. See, there was an art to it that Roman executioners would have appreciated. The stake had to be carefully rounded, oiled, not too sharp, because you didn't want to pierce any vital organs. The impalement would begin at the rectum or genitals, the stake slowly driven upward through the body cavity over the course of hours sometimes, a full day carefully navigating around the spine, avoiding the heart and lungs for as long as possible. The goal was to have the stake emerge from the shoulder or mouth while keeping the victim alive and conscious. Vlad's executioners were so skilled they could keep someone living on the stake for up to 3 days. 3 days of vertical agony, your own body weight slowly pulling you down onto the wood, gravity becoming the cruelest torturer. And Vlad would arrange these bodies with aesthetic consideration. Tallest stakes in the center, radiating outward by height, creating this horrible geometry of suffering that could be seen for miles. When Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, a man who'd seen every form of violence the medieval world could invent, marched his army into Wallachia and encountered Vlad's forest of 20,000 impaled bodies, he turned his entire army around. Mehmed, who'd conquered Constantinople, who'd ordered mass drownings and beheadings, took one look at Vlad's work and said, in essence, I can't conquer a man who does this to his enemies. What would he do to his own people? That's the question that should haunt you. What did Vlad do to his own people? The impaled Ottomans were invaders. They expected violence. But Vlad's real genius for degradation was reserved for Wallachian nobility, for merchants, for anyone who questioned his authority, even slightly. There are records of him inviting beggars and the sick to a feast, a grand gesture of charity, feeding hundreds in his great hall. Once they'd eaten their fill, once they felt safe and grateful, Vlad asked them a question. Would you like to be without cares, lacking nothing in this world? They shouted yes, praising his generosity. He had the hall doors barred from outside and set the building on fire. As it burned, he told his remaining boyars, I have freed them from their misery. Now they lack nothing. The smile never left his face. Now let me tell you about something that makes Vlad look almost reasonable by comparison, because at least he killed people relatively quickly. Let's talk about Scaphism, but the version nobody discusses, the modifications made by Byzantine torturers who had centuries to perfect their craft. The boats we mentioned earlier, that was the Persian blueprint. The Byzantines, those refined inheritors of Roman sophistication, added layers. They'd first coat the interior of the boats with a mixture of honey and spoiled milk, creating a bacterial paradise. Then they'd make shallow cuts all over your body, nothing deep, just enough to bleed a little, to create entry points. The force feeding wasn't just milk and honey. They'd add fermented fruit, overripe figs, anything that would accelerate intestinal distress. But here's the innovation. They depositioned the boats not in still water, but in tidal marshes where the water level would rise and fall. Twice a day, you'd nearly drown. Twice a day, you'd be left baking in the sun. Your flesh would blister, crack, the honey attracting not just insects, but crabs, small fish, anything that fed on decay. The Byzantine scholars would record these executions meticulously, noting how long different body types survived, whether fat or thin lasted longer, whether men or women showed different decay patterns. This wasn't cruelty. This was research. The condemned were data points in an ongoing study of how much suffering a human body could absorb before biological systems collapsed entirely. But you want to know what's more disturbing than the torture itself? It's how normalized it became, how casual. There are court records from medieval France describing a minor noble who was sentenced to be broken on the wheel for theft. The wheel was exactly what it sounds like. You'd be tied to a large wagon wheel, and the executioner would use an iron bar to systematically break every major bone in your body. Legs first, then arms, then the torso, saving the skull for last if the crowd was feeling merciful. The breakage was methodical. 2 strikes per limb, 1 at the joint, 1 at the midpoint, to ensure complete shattering. Then the wheel would be hoisted onto a pole and left standing in the town square, your broken body woven through the spokes, and you'd stay there until you died from exposure or shock or all 3. Could take days. The disturbing part isn't just the torture. It's that the court records describe this sentencing in the same bureaucratic tone as a parking ticket. For the crime of theft, defendant shall be broken upon the wheel, sentenced to be carried out Thursday after market hours to ensure maximum attendance. Executioner's fee, 3 silver coins. Wheel maintenance, 1 silver coin. Total cost to crown, 4 silver coins. The human being about to have every bone in their body shattered was literally less important than the accounting. Let's talk about something that happened in 1514 in Hungary, because sometimes the most disturbing punishments weren't even for crimes. They were for daring to want basic human dignity. György Dosa led a peasant revolt against the nobility. When it failed, the nobles decided his death needed to be special. They constructed an iron throne and heated it until it glowed red. They made an iron crown and heated that too. Then they starved Dosa's closest followers for days before bringing them all into the square. Dosa was stripped, placed on the burning throne, the molten crown forced onto his head. Then, as his skin bubbled and his screams made dogs howl 3 streets away, the nobles forced his starved followers to bite chunks from his burning flesh. They had to eat their own leader while he roasted alive, or they'd receive the same treatment. Some of Dosa's men complied. Some refused and were immediately thrown onto burning stakes. But here's the detail that should keep you awake. The nobles were eating too. Not human flesh, of course. They'd set up tables around the execution, a full feast, and they dined while Dosa cooked, taking bets on which of his followers would crack first, discussing the weather and hunting plans between bites. The execution took 6 hours. For 6 hours, György Dosa burned alive on that throne while being slowly consumed by his own followers. The nobles finished their meal before Dosa finished dying. This is what medieval Europe understood that we've collectively forgotten. Humiliation isn't just about pain. Pain is temporary. Humiliation is permanent. It rewrites not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. When Scottish rebel William Wallace was captured in 1305, the English didn't just execute him. They put him on trial for treason, which was legally absurd since he'd never sworn loyalty to England in the first place. Then they sentenced him to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, but with modifications. He was dragged through London tied to a horse, naked for miles, then hanged, but cut down before he lost consciousness. Then they castrated him, burning his genitals in front of his face. Then they disemboweled him, slowly, pulling out his organs while keeping him alive to watch. One chronicler notes that Wallace remained conscious long enough to see his own intestines thrown into a fire. Only after all that did they behead him and hack his body into quarters. But the English weren't done. They sent the quarters to 4 different cities, displayed as warnings. His head went on London Bridge. For 17 years, William Wallace's skull sat on a spike above the Thames, birds nesting in what remained of his eye sockets, his jaw eventually falling off into the river below. The message wasn't, "This is what happens to traitors." The message was, "We can destroy you so completely that even your corpse becomes a joke." Here's what should truly disturb you about all of this. These weren't aberrations. These weren't psychopaths. These were legal sentences, carried out by state-appointed executioners, witnessed by crowds who brought their children, who bought snacks from vendors, who treated public torture the same way we treat football games. The executioners were guild members with apprenticeships and retirement plans. There were manuals, technical guides on proper breaking techniques, optimal stake placement, how to time drownings to maximize suffering without causing early death. These documents survive. They're in museums. They're written in the same matter-of-fact tone as carpentry instructions. And the worst part, the thing that should make your skin feel like it doesn't fit right anymore, is that the people doing this, the nobles ordering it, the executioners performing it, the crowds watching it, they didn't think they were monsters. They thought they were maintaining civilization. They thought public torture was how you kept society orderly. They genuinely believed that a kingdom without regular executions was a kingdom sliding into chaos. The suffering wasn't the point. The suffering was the method. The point was control, order, the preservation of hierarchy. And they documented it all with the pride of craftsmen, never once questioning whether the architecture of their civilization was built on a foundation of industrialized human degradation. That's the legacy we don't talk about. Not the torture itself, but how normal it became, How systematized. How boring.